Something happened behind the scenes during the NFL draft that should have every single Ravens fan paying attention right now, because while the rest of the league was trying to stop Baltimore from improving, the Ravens quietly may have built the foundation for a much more dangerous football team in 2026. Rival teams were scrambling, draft rooms were nervous, and one AFC North opponent reportedly tried to jump directly in front of Baltimore to steal a player the Ravens desperately wanted. But somehow, everything still fell perfectly into place for Eric DeCosta and this front office. And now, after bringing back Calais Campbell, adding one of the most physical offensive linemen in the draft, and landing a rookie defender that many inside the league believe plays with true old-school Ravens mentality, there's a growing feeling that Baltimore is preparing to become one of the toughest teams in football again. But before we dive into everything that is happening, make sure you hit that like button if you truly believe the Ravens are building a Super Bowl caliber roster for 2026. And I want to see confidence from the fan base today, so drop this in the comments right now. The Ravens are coming back stronger than ever in 2026. Now let's get right into this because the Ravens officially brought back Calais Campbell, and honestly, this move feels much bigger than many people are talking about right now. The moment Baltimore finalized that contract, the defensive line instantly became tougher, more experienced, and much more dangerous. This is the type of veteran presence that changes the entire mentality of a locker room. Ravens fans know exactly what Calais Campbell brings to the field. He brings leadership, toughness, accountability, and that old-school Ravens mentality that this team desperately needed more of last season. But that is only part of the story because ESPN recently released behind-the-scenes draft intel that revealed just how intense things became during the NFL draft, and apparently, the Pittsburgh Steelers were doing everything possible to try to interfere with Baltimore's plans. According to the report, offensive lineman Vina Yalwan became one of the hottest names in the early part of the draft, and teams knew the Ravens were heavily targeting him. That created serious tension around pick number 13 because Baltimore was sitting right behind that selection at number 14. The Rams reportedly received calls from teams interested in jumping ahead of Baltimore, and one of the biggest suspicions around the league was that Pittsburgh was trying to move up specifically to steal the player the Ravens wanted most. Think about that for a second. The Steelers were not just trying to improve their own roster. They were potentially trying to block Baltimore from improving theirs. That tells you everything you need to know about how respected this Ravens front office has become around the NFL. And honestly, it makes perfect sense why Pittsburgh was interested. Their interior offensive line needed major help after losing Isaac Sumolo in free agency, and they clearly viewed Vina Yalwan as a potential solution. But in the end, Baltimore stayed patient, trusted their board, and it completely paid off. The Rams stayed put, the Steelers failed to execute their plan, and the Ravens landed the exact player they wanted anyway. That is a huge victory for Eric DeCosta and the entire front office. What makes this even more satisfying for Ravens fans is what happened immediately afterward. Philadelphia ended up making a move of their own and completely disrupted Pittsburgh's next draft plan as well. The Steelers thought they had another target lined up, but the Eagles jumped in front of them and ruined everything. That is the kind of draft chaos Ravens fans love to see when it happens to a division rival. Now let's talk about why the Ravens were so determined to land Vina Yalwan, because this was not just another offensive line pick. Baltimore understood something very important after last season. The interior offensive line simply was not good enough. The Ravens struggled physically in the trenches at times, and that cannot happen if this team truly wants to compete for a Super Bowl. Everybody gets excited about wide receivers, edge rushers, flashy highlights, and jersey-selling stars, but football games are still won at the line of scrimmage. Scouts around the league reportedly love Vina Yalwan because of his strength, size, football IQ, and overall understanding of the position. Those are the exact traits Baltimore values most in offensive linemen, and the early expectation already appears clear. He is expected to slide directly into that right guard spot while veteran John Simpson handles the left side. When asked about the transition, Yalwan sounded completely confident and ready for the challenge. That confidence matters because Ravens fans are expecting him to become an immediate impact player from day one. But the Ravens draft story does not stop there because another major revelation from the ESPN intel involved Ruben Bain and Kenyon Sadiq. Both players were reportedly heavily discussed by Baltimore during the first-round process. There was even consideration about potentially trading back during the draft, which honestly sounds exactly like something Eric DeCosta would explore because he always values extra draft capital. For months, many fans doubted Ruben Bain would even be available when Baltimore picked, but he surprisingly fell right into range. Teams around the league reportedly became concerned about his arm length, which caused his stock to slide. Meanwhile, Kenyon Sadiq became one of the most discussed potential Ravens selections throughout the draft process. In the end, Baltimore prioritized fixing the trenches first, and that decision tells you exactly how seriously this organization took the offensive line problems from last season. Still, the most fascinating part of all this may actually be Zion Young, because the Ravens sound absolutely thrilled that they were able to grab him in the second round. According to the intel, Baltimore had a first-round grade on Young, but concerns from other teams allowed him to fall directly into the Ravens' hands. And now this team may have landed one of the nastiest competitors in the entire class. The energy surrounding Zion Young is already becoming legendary among Ravens fans. Coaches and evaluators love the intensity he brings onto the field. There's already viral footage circulating from overtime during the Missouri vs. Auburn game where Young was caught on the microphone screaming with unbelievable intensity before the extra period started. That kind of mentality is exactly what many fans felt was missing from Baltimore last season. Too many times in 2025, Ravens fans watched this team get pushed around physically and mentally. At moments, the team looked flat, exhausted, and disconnected from the violent identity that once defined Ravens football. But Zion Young might represent the return of that edge. He may not immediately dominate statistically as a rookie, but the emotional impact he could bring to this defense may become enormous. That is why this offseason suddenly feels different. Bringing back Calais Campbell adds veteran toughness. Drafting Vita Yalwan strengthens the trenches. Landing Zion Young injects raw energy and aggression back into the defense. Baltimore is clearly trying to rebuild the physical identity that once made opponents fear playing against them every single week. And honestly, Ravens fans should be excited because the pieces are starting to come together in a very serious way. The AFC remains brutal. The road to the Super Bowl will not be easy, but Baltimore appears fully committed to becoming tougher, nastier, and more complete than they were a season ago. What makes this entire situation even more interesting for Baltimore Ravens fans is the fact that this front office clearly approached this offseason with one specific mission in mind: bringing back the true Ravens identity. And if you really think about everything we have discussed so far, every single move points in that exact direction. This team is no longer trying to simply outscore opponents or rely only on talent. They want to become physically overwhelming again. They want teams to feel exhausted after 4 quarters against Baltimore. That has always been the DNA of Ravens football, and honestly, it feels like they are finally getting back to that mentality. You can already see how much confidence the organization has in this rookie class. The excitement surrounding Vita Yalwan inside the building appears very real. Coaches reportedly believe he can stabilize the offensive line immediately, and that matters because the Ravens cannot afford another season where interior pressure disrupts the offense at critical moments. Last year there were simply too many situations where the pocket collapsed too quickly, the run game became inconsistent inside, and the offense lost rhythm because the trenches were not winning consistently enough. Now imagine adding a powerful, intelligent rookie guard into that environment while also having experienced veterans around him. That changes everything for the offense. It gives stability. It gives confidence to the quarterback. It helps the running game become more physical again. And most importantly, it allows Baltimore to play the exact style of football they want to play. And one thing that stood out from the draft intel is just how badly other teams wanted to prevent Baltimore from landing him. That should tell Ravens fans something important. Around the NFL, people clearly viewed Vita Yalwan as a high-level prospect capable of making an immediate impact. Pittsburgh attempting to jump ahead of Baltimore